It's time for Agriculture, presented by TURKANA Farms in Germantown, New York, a small-scale producer of heritage breed livestock and a wide array of vegetables and berries on just over 39 acres. They also produce a full array of garden vegetables, many of them heirloom varieties raised naturally, as well as an assortment of berries, including raspberries, blackberries, gooseberries, black, red, and white currants, mulberries, and elderberries. And now, here's Troy Spindler.
Hey all, Troy here. This Wednesday, while I was driving home from the big freezer, steam began to rise from the hood of our farm truck. The gauge indicated that the engine was extremely overheated, so I pulled over in a nearby parking lot. I don't know much about engines, but I could see something had cracked and fluid was leaking everywhere, and I figured that was pretty important for the function of the vehicle, so I had it towed. I don't know the prognosis yet, but I'm fairly sure this old '98 Chevy is in its twilight days, especially since this is the third time this year it has broken down. The last time this happened, the mechanic called it a veritable rust bucket and said this sort of thing will just keep happening. As we depend on the truck for so much around here, it might be time to look for a more reliable replacement. But during this uncertain period of transition, my brain inevitably turns to the question, what would we do if we had to live without it? We were forced to face this question when we lost the barn early in the summer. We had to adjust immediately, adding temporary fencing and improvising pasture rotations. We converted the corral into a makeshift area where we could do everything for the sheep, from feed and observe them to taking care of their hooves and giving medications. It was harder and messier, sure, but we went without a barn for months, and the sheep have thrived. Getting through the winter would be a lot harder, but I can imagine ways we could provide shelter from the snow and wind. It would be difficult, but not unimaginable. Likewise for the truck. Without a truck, we wouldn't be able to transport our animals or deliver hay to them. But it's not out of the question that we could learn to skillfully slaughter our own animals and hay our own fields if we had to. We would have to switch to selling only whole animals and fresh meats and acquire equipment for haying, a scythe maybe, or a dog-pulled cart. It would mean more work overall, but it would lower our carbon footprint if we're not driving long distances for so many things. Okay, so these imagined scenarios may be a bit implausible in our current circumstances, but thinking them through is a valuable skill for building sustainability. If we can come up with reasonable backup plans for when we lose critical pieces of equipment, we aren't as vulnerable when accidents or disasters happen. And maybe we'll also discover ways to make our operations less dependent on those things before catastrophe strikes. This feels like important work beyond the farm as well, since the looming climate crisis suggests that loss and scarcity may define the decades to come. Having said that, there are certain things I would rather not imagine living without. A few weeks ago, I floated my resume and a cover letter to the nearby bioscience company TURKANA Biosciences, looking for some part-time weekend work. TURKANA raises lab rodents and sells them to researchers and universities across the country. I thought it was fortuitous that such a close match to my academic and professional background existed only a few minutes down the road. Apparently they saw promise too and invited me for an interview, but first they had to disclose a stipulating company policy. Employees cannot keep rodent pets, as they might accidentally bring contaminating bacteria into the lab and endanger the health of the lab animals. In other words, we would have to rehome our pet dwarf rabbit, MapQuest. Here I am, just looking to trade my time and energy for some extra income, and all I'd have to give up is the living, breathing embodiment of my sensitive, furry, grass-eating heart. The thought has not been easy to contemplate. I've previously written about MapQuest and his role on the farm and in our family. I'm sure he would adjust to a new loving, caring home in time. But what about me? Who will put his little paws up on my leg? Who will give me curious sniffs? Who will run circles around me when he's excited? It may not sound like much to you, but these are valuable resources for me. There must be other weekend job opportunities around here. To reimagine the farm without a truck or a barn requires only that we reevaluate the balance between our time and our money. If we can somehow picture a better place without these tools, then we can start thinking about shifting our priorities. But if our imagined future comes at the expense of the things we value most, that's when the experiment collapses. By keeping MapQuest close, I'm also making an investment in myself and the things that help me find joy every day. That's worth prioritizing sometimes too.
Agriculture is underwritten by TURKANA Farms, LLC, a small-scale producer of heritage-bred livestock and a wide array of vegetables and berries on just over 39 acres in Germantown, New York. More information, 518-537-3815.